The Broncos with their most complete game of the season in dominating fashion over the Cleveland Browns, and it's their 5th straight win on the season. The Broncos postgame show starts right now. Hello, and thank you for joining us here in studio. I am Phil Milani alongside Nick Ferguson. Nick, 5 in a row feels pretty good.
5 in a row feels really good. You know what's feel better than that? 6 in a row. When was the last time that Broncos country was able to celebrate something like that? The team is now on the road, and like I said a couple of weeks ago, and some people barked at me on social media, that's okay, I will forgive you, but the culture change is now in full swing. Look at where this team is now compared to where they were that Miami Dolphin game, and that seemed like it was almost 6 years ago, so good for those guys finding a way to bounce back.
Yeah, they're able to win these tough, gritty, games, and it sort of feels like they found the key to making this thing work out here. Let's check out some of the highlights from Empower Field at Mile High. Opening drive of the game for the Broncos. They go right down the field, 9 plays, 80 yards. Samaje Perine caps it off, 7-0 Denver, just the 2nd rushing score of the season. Russell Wilson using his legs here, 19 yards, and they really did a great job keeping that Browns rushing attack at bay. Few plays later, it's Russ again, a 2-yard scamper. The Broncos are feeling pretty good here, but the Browns got back in the mix. It was a 5-point game in the 4th. Little too cute here, though. The big fella, DJ Jones, there to recover. Looks like he wanted a little more than that, Nick. He was thinking end zone there, but the Broncos take advantage of the turnover. 3rd and goal, Adam Troutman. Hey, look, it's a game of inches here. His 2nd touchdown of the season, and the Broncos go on to win 29-12. Nick, that's the first score ever in NFL history with that final. And let's go out to Empower Field at Mile High and check in with our team reporters, Cindy Jones and Aric DiLalla.
Thanks, Phil. Aric, 5 straight wins for this Broncos team. No one in this Broncos locker room has seen that here in Denver. So, I mean, overall, what does this just mean for the team?
Yeah, big win. Obviously, an AFC playoff hopeful in the Cleveland Browns. Needed to get this win, needed to get to 6-5. Now tied with a couple of teams there for the 7 seed, which just 5 weeks ago would have seemed absolutely crazy to talk about. And so this team just keeps finding ways to win. It faces adversity today in the 3rd quarter. The Browns cut it to 2 points, and the Broncos find a way to go on a little run there and really never get challenged again. The rest of the game, they keep finding ways to respond, to get wins, and so they dominated this one.
They did. Aric, I know head coach Sean Payton, he talked about how pleased he was just with the team's physicality tonight, and looking at the running game specifically, they were able to get that back going as well, 169 yards on the ground. Yeah,
season high for the Broncos on the ground, which is great. Use that to power some scoring drives. Obviously, kind of lent on the rush a little bit, and Russ didn't throw a ton of passes, I think 22, but when he did, they were effective and able to make big plays. But yeah, this was a game where you wanted to wear the Browns down a little bit. You wanted to keep yourself out of 3rd and longs. The Broncos, for the most part, were able to do that. Russ only got sacked 1 time, I believe. And so, we heard all week, right? And we talked about it, how good this Browns defense is, how historic it is. These guys in the locker room, I'm sure they hear that. I'm sure they want to prove that they're capable as well. We heard Mike McGlinchey say earlier this week, hey, we've got some pretty good football players too. Yeah. They showed that tonight.
Aric, the Broncos, they're playing meaningful games in December here.
It's
exciting.
Great. It's very exciting.
It is. Phil, we'll send it back to you before we head into the locker room here.
Thank you very much, guys. We're back here in studio. Phil Milani alongside Nick Ferguson. Nick, it's a 29-12 victory. Really, the Broncos were able to play smash mouth football against the Browns and got another victory.
Yeah, when you get this to this back half of the season, you're going to need to know how to win games like that. And when you look at a division that Cleveland is coming from, they're known as the black and blue division, and that was kind of what this game was projected to be coming into it. And the Broncos knew that they were in for a fist fight. We're talking about Rocky Balboa and Clubber Lang. And in this particular movie, the Broncos emerged victorious as Rocky Balboa. And great job by that guy that line up front. They did a great job of keeping Myles Garrett and a lot of those defensive players, talented defensive players the Browns have, off the stat sheet, and that's the way everything starts. When you do that, it allows the offense to establish some type of rhythm, some type of chemistry, and when you do that, you get the dub.
Yeah, all week long we heard so much about Myles Garrett, led the league in sacks. Sean Payton said the coaching staff devoted one night of game planning on how to prevent Garrett from wrecking this game. Today he had just one QB pressure, Nick. And then even on the other side, the defense, they're keeping the takeaways going, 15 now over a 4-week span, and they really played smash mouth football too.
Absolutely. And I don't know this for sure, but I'm going to toss it out there. Saturday night in the hotel, maybe Vance Joseph just kind of showed his defense, not highlights of them this past season, but highlights of the Cleveland Browns to let it sink in how everyone is talking about Jim Schwartz and the Browns defense and not so much about the Broncos defense and the way they came out and played. Today, they had 3 turnovers and a safety. It seemed as though those guys were upset and they wanted to let the Browns in the league know it's not just about the Browns. They play defense in Denver. And Vance Joseph, man, let's pat that dude on the back.
Yeah.
Because he's got them playing great football, collective football.
Yeah, and even Will Lutz made a field goal, so it was all 3 phases of the game for the Broncos, able to get this one 29-12. It was never really in doubt, Nick. It was definitely a complete victory for the Broncos. Here's what Sean Payton had to say after the game.
I just finished telling the team, we felt like this was going to be a pretty physical game. We had a lot of respect for this team, both how they played defensively and how they rushed the football. We felt like the rushing numbers were going to be real important when this game ended. And credit our players on defense, Vance and his staff. We got into some heavier fronts, and fortunately, we jumped ahead early on in that first half, and we were better in the red zone. There were a lot of things we did today that I was pleased with, and we felt like we beat a good football team. So
let's start on the offensive side of the ball here, Nick. 39 rushes for the Broncos. Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin got in the mix there. They really took it to that Browns defensive front.
Yeah, they did, and I mean, still you don't have a 100-yard rusher yet, but you really don't need that, especially if you're playing complementary football field. And everyone got involved in the game plan. And what I loved about it was Russell Wilson pulled the ball down once the pocket started to break down, and he tried to extend plays with his feet. That right there kind of took and drew the attention of the defense, allowing for small creases in the defense for the Cleveland Browns. The one thing I realized that also that the Broncos did, the idea was coming into the game, run the football, but I always look at it from a schematic standpoint. It is difficult to run against great defenses like this, so we saw a different variety of runs that we haven't seen all season long. You said it yourself. The coaching staff got together, came up with a game plan to shut down Myles Garrett, or at least slow him down. You had to figure they thought about some run plays too as well to take advantage of that talented Cleveland Browns defense.
Yeah, they found some success up the middle in particular there. 169 yards on the ground for the Broncos. And Russell Wilson, you mentioned it there. When he got outside, he was making those edge defenders really think about, okay, what's going on here? He had a lot of success outside. And then when he needed to, Nick, once again, doing enough here to, 134 yards passing. That's not going to wow anybody, but it was so efficient, Nick. And he hit Cortland Sutton for a couple of big ones.
See, that's the big thing when we started to look at the quarterback position in the NFL. We've all become obsessed due to fantasy football with gaudy numbers. You really don't need that. I mean, you can go out there and pass the ball for 139 or even 180 yards and still win the game. The biggest thing you want to make sure it's about efficiency. Russ didn't really turn the ball over that frequently, especially against his defense. That one fumble that was punched out, great job by the defender, but Russ played a great game, and sometimes you're going to have these tough games where all you can do is what you can do, and that should be enough, and that's what allowed the Broncos to emerge victorious today.
Yeah, and 29 points in total, attack on a safety there, but 29 points against the number 1 defense in the NFL. That's I think you'll take that. The other thing the Broncos did, dominated time of possession, and against a Browns team that had dominated time of possession. So great game for the Broncos offense, and here's what the quarterback had to say.
About this game, about professional sports, there's always adversity. And how you handle the adversity really shows who you are and who you can be as a team and as a player. And I think we've handled the adversity. And I think that the reality is that we got a lot more ball to go. You know, we got to stay humble and hungry. We got a lot more to do, and we feel like we're just getting started, and we just got to stay the course. You know, understanding that we got to remain neutral and just focus on one game at a time, 1 week at a time, one practice at a time.
And hey, we talked about the offense. Let's talk about the defense. Give this side of the ball its props here. 3 takeaways on the day. They were playing physical. They got after DTR there. He had to leave the game with a concussion. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And they were flying around and really making life difficult for the Browns.
Yeah, you know, I'm really proud of this defense as a whole, but more importantly, those young edge rushers. Every single week, they come to the party and they bring their hard hat and their Timberland shoes, and they're getting after the opposing quarterback. And as long as they do that, the Broncos defense will continue to have a chance. But when you think about the level of turnovers, now in comparison to the beginning of the season, and that was kind of a problem. There were not a lot of takeaways. When you look at the turnover differential, now that is leaning heavily towards the Bronco and in their favor. And to me, with each game, each opponent, more confidence teams seems to grow with this group. I can't wait to see what they do next week in Houston.
Oh, me too. I mean, even having PJ Locke out there, I thought was a big deal. He's sort of that physical guy out there, and we weren't sure if he was going to play all week long. He was out there, and you really felt his impact.
Yeah, I got to tip my cap to PJ Locke, and you're right. I mean, we didn't really think that he was going to be available to be out there on the field, but he showed how his presence is needed on the field. And when he's on the field, he's just not a guy out there just taking up a roster spot.
He's making
plays happen. So I love to see that, and I know the fan base, they loved it because that was the biggest question. With KJ being out, who was going to come in and fit that role? And PJ Locke, he's showing that he deserves to have a starting position in this Broncos defense.
Yeah, he made a lot of plays out there. And you mentioned the takeaways, Nick. 15 in a 4-week span. That's the most for Broncos defense since 1989. Let's go inside the Broncos locker room and check in with Sidney Jones.
Thanks, Phil. We're inside the locker room here with defensive tackle DJ Jones. DJ, 5 wins in a row now, a winning record. I mean, what does this mean to you guys?
It's a blessing, first and foremost. And we're just trying to go 1-0 every week. Personally, I'm not looking at stacked on top of each other 5 in a row. Don't get ahead of yourselves. That's what I was always taught. But we want to know today, and I'm proud of the group.
I mean, 15 takeaways in the past 4 games. What can you just say about, specifically the defense's resilience and being able to keep that going?
It's preparation. We do it in practice, so it's going to happen in the game.
DJ, your fumble recovery felt like a turning point in the game. The Broncos, they were up 5 points, and then they go and get that touchdown. I mean, can you walk me through that and kind of what that meant to you to contribute in that way?
I mean, just like anybody else, I love contributing for the team. I should have scored. I should have got it, but I'm glad I got it for the offense.
DJ, there was a lot of talk heading into this game, just how good the Cleveland defense was. So do you guys feel like you went out there and really made a big statement about this defense?
Of course, but I think we worried more about ourselves. Let our offense control their defense, and we worry about their offense. They had a great running game coming into the game. I feel like we do what we need to win.
DJ, do you look ahead at all with December right around the corner? Do you think about the playoff picture at all at this point?
No, we don't. Texans. On to the Texans. Yep.
DJ, I appreciate your time. Congrats on the win.
Thank you.
Phil, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you very much, Sidney. Time to wrap up the post-game show here now. Nick, the Broncos, they've won 5 in a row, 6-5 on the season, and they got a big one against Houston next week.
Yeah, big game in Houston next week. And Houston, they're going to be at home. They just lost to Jacksonville, so they want to try to get back in the winning ways. But when you look at both teams being 6-5, playoff implications, wild card positions, this is going to be a huge game. And it's a reason, it's like almost like the league had a crystal ball where they could see this in advance. So much so they had to flex the game from 2 o'clock to 11 a.m. Mountain Time. So I expect a great game. Bobby Slowick is doing a great job offensively with C.J. Stroud. My former teammate, D'Amico Ryans, he has that defense and that team believing that they can be one of those surprise teams, and they've been that thus far. So another tough week for the Broncos, but go down to Houston, keep the same energy, keep that same defensive mentality, move the ball, run the ball, don't turn the ball over, and the Broncos can pull out a victory.
Yeah, and when you need it to, Russ, looks like vintage Russ out there, and they were good in the red zone today. So see if the Broncos can keep this thing rolling now at 6-5 after a 29-12 victory over the Cleveland Browns. That's going to do it for us. For Nick Ferguson, I'm Phil Milani. This has been the Broncos Postgame Show.